Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears to some of the relevant issues that are taking place throughout our cities, country, and states, and sometimes our world. I'm just trying to heighten your five senses that God has given us to make rational decisions as we navigate through this crazy, wonderful world we call life. And I got this one coming straight out of Chicago. This is a very interesting commentary about a cop who's trying to change his race. So here we go. White cop sues department to change his race. A veteran cop who says he doesn't identify as Caucasian wants to change the racial designation on his personal file from white to one he believes is more appropriate, even taking a genetic test to bolster his contentions, but claims the department won't let him. That's according to a $1 million civil rights lawsuit filed by Officer Muhammed Yusuf, who joined the Chicago Police Department in 2004 and was compelled to identify as Caucasian, despite not identifying as white. Now Yusuf, who is of Egyptian descent and currently identifies as Egyptian and African American, wants a federal judge to make the CPD update its records to accurately reflect his race as North African. While other CPD officers can correct their gender to match their gender identity, other officers like Yusuf are barred from obtaining accurate racial designations matching their racial identity, the lawsuit states. Yusuf's attorney, Gianna Scatchell Basili, told the Daily Beast she sees the lawsuit, which she described as one of its kind, as a referendum of sorts on identities changing and fluid nature. She says, I think the city of Chicago was on the right track when they allowed people to change their gender identity and allowed them to identify as the proper gender. But when it comes to race, it's just very arbitrary, said Basili, who is married to a CPD detective. The CPD stands that racial identity is immutable, contradicts contemporary understandings of race as fluid and complex social constructs, the lawsuit goes on. This outdated viewpoint fails to recognize the dynamic nature of racial identity and has tangible adverse effects on Officer Yusuf's professional experiences within the police force. Accurate identity documentation is a cornerstone of dignified treatment within the workplace and is pivotal in assessing fair employment and promotional opportunities, which in CPD's current environment hinge on the accurate reflection of an individual's racial identity. The suit says, to end that, it claims because of CPD's incorrect racial designation of Yusuf as Caucasian, he has been passed over for the merit system promotion to sergeant. CPD officials did not respond to the Daily Beast's request for comment. When Yusuf joined the CPD in 2004, the onboarding paperwork did not include a racial or ethnic category into which he precisely fit, according to Basili, who provided the Daily Beast with a list of the 9 designations in use today. And here they are: Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, white, American Indian or Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, 2 or more races, and I choose not to disclose. Pacific Islander. 2 decades ago, the choice was even more limited, Basili said, noting that the present categories still do not include an option for North African Middle Eastern. So when Yusuf asked higher-ups for guidance on which race to select, Basili said they told him just to mark himself off as white. In his lawsuit, which was filed February 19th of this year, Yusuf says he initially perceived this as a minor administrative inconvenience, expecting the CPD would revise its procedures to reflect an evolving societal understanding of race. The American Medical Association recognizes race as a social construct rather than an inherent biological trait. Some 10 million Americans check off a different race in the 2010 U.S. Census than they did in 2000, period. Do Americans change their race? Yes, millions do. University of Minnesota sociologist Carolyn A. Liebler told the Pew Research Center at the time, and this varies by group. In 1997, Egyptian-born Mustafa Hemfni, who considered himself to be of Nubian ancestry, sued the U.S. government to be reclassified as black, arguing that his misclassification as white had excluded him from certain grants, scholarships, and loans. A judge dismissed Hemfni's case without prejudice in 1998. In 2019, he wrote a book titled, "I Am Not a White Man, but the U.S. Government is Forcing Me to Be One." Similarly, according to Yusuf's lawsuit, the Chicago Police Department enforces a policy and practice that categorically refuses to change the racial markers on individual officers' personnel records to match his or her racial or ethnic identity. After being consistently denied the opportunity to alter his racial designation within the department, CPD commanders demanded that Yusuf provide proof of his race or ethnicity before it would change his race or ethnicity in his personnel paperwork, according to the lawsuit. The idea of even having to prove race is wrong, Attorney Basili said. Race is not scientific. Still, Yusuf took a 23andMe DNA test to prove his Egyptian heritage to CPD officials, the lawsuit states. But even after providing the evidence, the department continued to deny Yusuf's request to change his racial designation, according to the suit. It says the CPD justifies its stance by pointing to an unspecified departmental policy, which arbitrarily asserts that changing one's racial identity is not possible. CPD does not oblige transgender cops to provide proof of their transition before updating their personnel records, according to the lawsuit. Such a policy is in line with those supported by mainstream medical organizations, which say surgery is not required before officially changing one's designated gender. By prohibiting Yusuf from updating his race from white to North African, the Chicago Police Department has erased his true racial identity, according to the lawsuit. CPD's promotional system has long been fraught, beginning with complaints that the written tests for aspiring sergeants and lieutenants were discriminatory, according to an investigation report released January 17th, 2017. By the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois. To diversify its mostly white ranks, the CPD first instituted a so-called merit-based promotions beginning in the 1990s. But the rank and file largely found themselves dissatisfied and discouraged by the merit promotions, which permitted supervisors to nominate cops for sergeant and lieutenant positions even if they scored poorly on the promotional exams, and they were phased out in 2019. But merit promotions were back again in 2021 and remain in place today. Yusuf took the sergeant's exam in 2019, and scored in the top tier of all candidates, according to his lawsuit, which says Yusuf has received numerous accolades and recognitions for his leadership, mentoring, decision making, and interpersonal skills. But he was also named as a defendant in a 2014 false arrest lawsuit that reportedly cost the city over $50,000. Since then, the suit says there have been roughly 75 merit based promotions to sergeant. Of those, fewer than 5 were white police officers, the suit claims. Yusuf, it points out, was not among them. Yusuf's suit claims that although he had exemplary qualifications, he has been repeatedly bypassed for promotion in favor of less qualified candidates based on their race, specifically African American officers, some of whom had disciplinary issues and were not suitable for the responsibility of sergeant. Basili's co-counsel, Christopher Cooper, himself a former Washington, D.C. police officer, conceded that this is the elephant in the room when it comes to Yusuf's case. While Yusuf would like to be reclassified as non-white because he thinks it would help him get promoted, Cooper, who is black, also insisted the CPD can be diversified without race-based quotas. We want racially diverse workplaces. We want workplaces that are representative of the larger population, Cooper told the Daily Beast. We're not saying the CPD should not make efforts to integrate its leadership. It should, but we want that to happen through equitable processes. Attorney Basili said Yusuf is not planning on retiring for quite a few years and remains confused and frustrated about not being able to change his racial designation at work. He thinks the Chicago Police Department is not recognizing that times have changed and he's stuck in this category, she said. An initial status hearing is scheduled for May 14th of 2024 at 10 a.m. in the Chicago Federal Court. This is a very interesting case because if you remember, the Supreme Court just abolished affirmative action that was on the books for well over 55 years, almost 50 years. And then they adopted this DEI, this diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is basically the same thing. They took affirmative action out, and then they put this acronym, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what you're finding is really interesting. You come from a system in America that has a history of racism and Jim Crow, where people of color have been discriminated against for many, many years. We just here recently have seen African Americans and black folks end up in high positions in politics, in the legal profession, in the medical profession. You have black mayors, you have black congressmen, congresswomen. We had the first black president. You're seeing a narrative where there are far more people of color that are reaching exceptional heights. We also have black billionaires in Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, Magic Johnson. The athletics and entertainment arena, black folks have done extremely well. You take sports like football and basketball, I think you would have reverse affirmative action because there are far more blacks that are playing on the field and on the court than your white counterparts. So we have a heavy preponderance of black athletes in especially football and basketball, and very few whites. But in the corporate structure and in the rest of America, we have a heavier number of white folks that are in high positions and leadership positions in blacks. But when it comes to this affirmative action was supposed to help change that skew and give people of color an opportunity to garner some of these heavy, high positions in all kinds of arenas in life. And we've made some great progressions. Affirmative action is gone now, and now you have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're seeing it at our universities, you're seeing it in corporate America, you're seeing individual departments having this kind of department now, this DEI, and you're also seeing the other one that you're seeing a lot now is these outreach, these community outreach positions. Where it seems like universities and corporate America is trying to bring and galvanize the community along with the businesses and these universities. So you're seeing a lot of community outreach and you're seeing DEI that's taking place. But you have many of your white counterparts that are very upset about where they were upset about affirmative action, didn't like it, saying that it was not merit-based, it was race-based, and then they're saying the same thing about this DEI. If you remember, Dr. Claudine Gay, who was the first black president of Harvard University, first black and first female out of 30 presidents in the history of the university, she ended up getting let go, or she, from being the university president. Well, the first chasm was about plagiarism. Well, the first one was about how she handled anti-Semitic rant at the university. Then it became an issue about plagiarism. And then the third issue with some of your board members at Harvard University started saying that she was not the appropriate person there in the first place, and that she got the job because of DEI. I find that a little bit hard to believe with a woman who had a Stanford undergraduate degree, and her undergraduate dissertation, she won several awards, and then she actually got her PhD in political science from Harvard. That doesn't sound like diversity, equity, and inclusion to me. But this, I think, in this particular case, where it says white cop sues department to change his race, if he's of Egyptian and African descent, technically he's not white, or of Caucasian descent. He may look like that in physical appearance because he may have not been raised in Egypt or certain parts of Africa, which is, as we all know from a geographical standpoint, is right close to the equator and is some of the hottest places on Earth. And people are of darker skin. So he may have been raised here in America, but he may look white. But technically, I would think that from a race standpoint, if you are Egyptian and are you from Africa or Northern Africa, then I think that it would be acceptable for you to put down as black. Just think about, you have interracial dynamics, you have mixed kids today, that they can, on an outer appearance, can be very, very light-skinned and could look Caucasian. However, they could have a black father, a black mother, and they would mark off themselves as being black. So I think he does have an appropriate case, in my opinion. I think when he first joined the force in 2004, this wasn't talked about as much, and I think in today's time, when we were talking about LGBTQ, transgender issues, identity issues, race issues, I believe he has a very fundamental case. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the courts rule on this particular matter. It also looks like, according to this particular report, that there is a little bit of affirmative action, or DEI, that was going on if the black police officers are not scoring as high as their white counterparts on the proficiency test to become lieutenants and sergeants, but they're still arbitrarily promoting these individuals. Then I do think that that the white counterparts, police officers, do have a reason to challenge those decisions. And he's been there almost 20 years, and he can obviously see those things taking place. But the other caveat I would say to you is that when the system in white America complains about affirmative action and DEI in corporate America or any other structure in our system, it is not taking that many spots from white people in America. If they give one or two people of color a position based on affirmative action or based on statistical measures and numbers, I mean, come on. We've had one black president out of all the presidents in the history of America. Has that really truly been affirmative action or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? How many black governors have we had? How many black Congress people have we had over the history of America? Black mayors. You're seeing a larger number nowadays of mayors, but when it comes to the U.S. Senate, Congress, let alone the president, the U.S. attorney, the Surgeon General, I don't think that affirmative action and DEI has put a real dent on holding back people of non-black heritage. So we've had inequitable scenarios and situations in America for a long time. I think there was, and to a certain degree, there still is a place for affirmative action or diversity, equity, inclusion to ensure that there is diversity in the workplace, in our political arena, in our government. And I think that this gentleman has a real case in the sense that if he's of Egyptian and North African descent, then I think that he is considered black. So it will be very interesting to see where this case goes in the court system, and this might be the first of its kind. I don't think he should be forced to be Caucasian if he's of Egyptian and North African descent. Tell me what you think. I thought this was a very interesting commentary. This particular video is not about death or destruction or a teacher with a student. This has a lot of legal ramifications to it, and as I said, I try to raise and heighten our five senses and elevate our consciousness. I hope you've listened to this entire video so I can get some thoughts and some commentary on it. Does this gentleman have, technically, first of all, is he white, being Egyptian and North African descent? That's number one. And number two, does he have a right to check off the box as being African American and or black? Tell me what you think. This has been a Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.